Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your day and a great week out there so far. Here to break down the latest on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Wednesday. We'll talk about the risk of strong to severe storms for a few areas of the country. We have active weather ongoing right now, a little bit of a flooding risk across areas of the Southwest, and we'll zoom into all these individual areas that do run the risk of strong to severe storms. Some people are begging for the rain. Some people are asking for the rain to stop. I think there's more people out there needing the rain than there's people out there just asking for it to stop, especially for my friends here in the Southeast, including me. This is day 16 without rain here in central South Carolina. So we are going to talk about that, talk about who runs the risk of those storms and that heavy rain, zoom into those areas and all that good stuff for you folks, and break down everybody else. Also talk a little bit about that heat too for individual areas. For example, my neck of the woods has a heat advisory today, which is not very common. Our criteria for them to drop a heat advisory here in Columbia, South Carolina is pretty high. So when they have a heat advisory in my neck of the woods, you know it is going to be hot, even hotter than what it's been. So we'll speak on that. And then after all that, guys, we're going to give you a pretty detailed update on the tropics, probably one of the most detailed updates that we've done in the last several days since we were breaking down Alberto. The main development region, the tropical Atlantic, looks to be heating up, which is not common for this time of the year. It's not extremely rare by any means, but with an active hurricane season expected, it's not as uncommon as you would think it would be. So we're going to speak on that. There's one tropical wave we are really watching as model guidance is really starting to increase on this developing. So we're going to speak on all that for you folks. So skip ahead if you're only wondering about the tropics. I'll have a timestamp up. And yeah, guys, just want to quickly mention, hit me up on social media, Facebook, Twitter. I'm not as active on Instagram, but all the links are there on the the header of my YouTube. It's a great way to stay up to date. It's a great way just to talk to me, communicate with me, follow me there. If you're not big on social media, that's cool. I get it. It's a very toxic thing out there. It can be, definitely, for sure, but it's a great way to communicate with me too. Hit me up there. You get frequent updates when it's active. I am very active. I'm a big time multitasker. So with all that being said, if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. All right, let's talk about what's going on right now. So, the immediate eastern U.S. is pretty quiet. A little bit of shower activity drifting through interior areas of New England. We got this blob of rain, heavy at times, moving through northeast Minnesota. We'll probably cruise across Lake Superior, enter the UP of Michigan, giving you guys a little bit of rain later this morning. And then we got an active complex of storms, which continues to basically round the eastern side of this ridging. And guys, this will continue to move downstream. And by the time this video drops, a lot of this weather will be pretty far south already. But we kind of have this area of storms moving one way, sort of drifting west to east, and this is surging, pretty much due south. So, I do think areas, eastern Oklahoma, pretty much all of Arkansas, eventually into Mississippi, all the way back over to eastern Texas, has a shot to get some nasty storms later on in the day, and that's why they have issued a slight risk here, which we'll speak about here in a second. Got a lot of moisture out west, just cruising through the Central Rockies. We'll speak on that. A little bit of moisture up here, cruising into the western coastline of Washington and Oregon. I wouldn't say a lot, but there certainly is some. So watches, warnings, advisories. Excessive heat warnings up for Oklahoma, areas of northern Texas. Brutally hot temperatures will be there again today with a lot of moisture in the atmosphere to boot. So that means your humidity is going to make your heat indices, be pretty high. It's going to feel hotter than what it really is. But look at these heat advisories in eastern North Carolina, central South Carolina to eastern South Carolina. I will say this, our hot isn't any more hotter than you guys in Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. In fact, I would argue you guys have been hotter than us over the last few summers. No doubt about it. But our heat advisory criteria is a little bit higher than most, especially in central South Carolina. I like to say we sit in a bowl here. So it takes them a lot here in the National Weather Service in Columbia to really issue that heat advisory, but they have issued them. So that tells us it's going to be hot today. So heat advisories also for areas of the Panhandle, Florida, some counties in Georgia, Alabama, and certainly a lot of counties in Mississippi. And heat advisories are up for areas in New Jersey. Once again, kind of the same counties as yesterday here in areas of the I-95 corridor up in the areas of the Mid-Atlantic, Delmarva, and Northeast. So that's what's going on right now. Flood watches are up in New Mexico, where the monsoonal moisture is expected. There's a huge marginal risk, just because a large area of the country will have the risk of strong to severe storms or just storms. So, of course, with any storm, you could produce flooding. And then you got a slight risk here in New Mexico, areas of Arizona. At least a 15% chance of flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles at any given point. So you certainly do have that flash flooding risk with the monsoon season starting to kick up and really getting the full swing here. It seems like Alberto really helped to pull the moisture from the south and really get this going, and it certainly has been going ever since. So now the Storm Prediction Center, we could get tweaks from this, from later updates per the Storm Prediction Center throughout the morning and afternoon. But as of now, we got 3 slight risks. One up here for areas of the central and southern Alps, west and east of the Appalachian Mountains, either side of West Virginia, the entire state of West Virginia covered in this, all the way up to the big cities of New York, Washington, D.C., up to Philadelphia. I expect a line of storms to surge through areas of like PA, work its way west to east, affect you guys later, and we're going to zoom into that area here in a second in the northeast timestamp. But a big slight risk up, going all the way back to Kentucky. There is a shot that this connects, let me speak right, and covers Nashville, Bowling Green, Jackson by the time we get into the next update from the National Hurricane. I need to slow down here. The National Weather Service. I'm not talking about hurricanes yet. Storm Prediction Center. We could get a slight risk kind of connected right here, but slight risk down here in Arkansas, down in Mississippi. I could see this changing too. In fact, I expect a marginal risk to get it pulled a little bit further south, maybe even a slight risk, to include more of eastern Texas, western Louisiana, and later updates. So we'll see what happens in slight risk here. So in the high plains. So tornado risk is below 2% today. I'm not going to mention it much, but there was a lot of controversial stuff going on in Nebraska yesterday. There was a storm that was obviously producing a tornado. The National Weather Service, and I'm not going to say which one. I think a lot of people in the weather community probably already know, especially if you live in Nebraska, and did not put a tornado warn tag on the storm, and it was quite obvious that there was a tornado. It even had a CC drop on it. The radar showed it. There was storm chasers on it showing it. And it was very odd. And, situations like that, we're not all perfect. We certainly aren't, but it was pretty obvious there was a tornado on it. And for whatever reason, they just didn't make it a tornado warning. But anyways, enough of that. I say that just because there's a 2% risk of a tornado or below, you could still get a tornado. You'll probably end up getting it today. So be aware of that. The wind threats, pretty much all these slight risks are driven off wind threats. 15% risk here, here, and here, which means if you live in a yellow, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour within 25 miles in a given location. Memphis, Little Rock, Charleston, West Virginia, Roanoke, Virginia, Baltimore, D.C., Philly, New York, Binghamton, Pittsburgh, Columbus, Cincinnati. You guys including in this, Colby, Garden City, almost all the way up to Cheyenne. Doesn't include Denver, but, like I said, Little Rock, Jackson, already mentioned those. But, some of this information could tweak. Hail threat, biggest in the, gotta get this right, biggest in the plains. 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. So, let's talk about the southeast first. A couple things going on. One of those things is the heat. A couple other things is the storms. So, we'll zoom into a couple of these areas. One thing I'll mention is you'll have another day of showers and storms across the state of Florida. We take it to about midday. The Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, Virginia look pretty quiet. Eastern Tennessee. But you see all this energy kind of moving in. This is going to be a hard day to predict storms back here. It is. These are ridge rider storms. They're kind of rounding the boundary of the ridge. It's really tough to figure out the directional movement of these storms. But we are going to have some pop-up downpours anywhere in South Carolina. It's very possible. Not very widespread today. I think tomorrow, for a lot of people that have not seen rain in the Carolinas, tomorrow is going to be your opportunity. And I think there'll be more opportunities into the weekend. But today is going to be, I think, mostly a dry day. You see these storms along the eastern coastline of Florida and just pop-up activity, mainly east and south of the Alps. Very pop-up. Once you get west of the Appalachian Mountains, more widespread activity is likely. Look at all these storms in Mississippi, Tennessee, and all this energy will be heading west to east except this, which is rounding the ridge, nasty line of storms. But we'll be heading towards the apps as we are starting to get into the overnight hours and waking up tomorrow morning, and we could have some energy, impulsive energy, that could give us some widespread showers and storms across the southeast because we really need it. Today, though, for the most part, pretty dry. But to zoom in to this heat, I want to, obviously I have the most followers probably in the Carolinas, so I always want to tip my hat to you guys, show you guys some love. But this is actual air temperatures, guys, going for 102. It hit 101 yesterday in Columbia, going for 102 today. I wouldn't be surprised we hit 103, 104. Fayetteville, low 100s. Augusta, same thing. And it's going to get hot in Georgia too. I mean, Charlotte going for 98. Upper 90s in the Greenville-Spartanburg. I mean, even Asheville hitting 91 today. Very hot in the Valley of Tennessee. Very hot all the way up into Virginia. But the heat indices, feels like temperatures, is brutal today. I mean, 105 to 110 is a sure bet in the Eastern Carolinas. Very hot temperatures, just off the shoreline of South Carolina and Georgia. You get away from the breeze and just the kind of the ocean air that creates a microclimate along the immediate coastline. I mean, it's going to be one of those days in Conway where we'll just be unbearably hot. You get down here to Savannah, just 107, 110 degree heat index. It's just going to be brutally hot. So just be aware of that. Definitely praying for you folks that have to work outside in this. But showers and storms, we'll back this up a little bit. Like I said, watch out for these storms. I mean, Nashville up to Bowling Green, Lexington, more so western Kentucky. This is this afternoon, getting into early this evening. Look at these showers and storms. Much needed rain will have an opportunity to fall in Alabama. You see this pop-up activity possible in the Carolinas, but don't expect this to be widespread. But you see the storms surging through Kentucky. This is around 8 p.m. And this all will start to die out by the time it gets to the kind of the western spine of the Appalachian Mountains. But then we'll have an opportunity. I'll kind of show you a teaser for tomorrow. This is tomorrow. Look at the widespread rain showing up in the Carolinas. Still, I wouldn't call it widespread, but it's a lot more widespread than what we've seen. I'm going to be begging. I'm going to be watching the radar like crazy here locally in South Carolina. Man, it would be nice to get some rain. Now, a lot of people are saying the same thing, but hopefully we can get it tomorrow. But not going to focus too much on that right now. Now, no, we're not doing this. So maybe I'll help you guys out later. We're good for one random pop-up on the computer. It's typically asking me to donate to block ads or something. But anyways, starting off this morning, we know that there's some nasty storms working in. The H-R model doing a decent job of picking up on this. But all in all, it's very hard for these models to really score big on this. This is a tough one to figure out with these models. So it is saying a lot of this energy will kind of head northwest to southeast, bring some stormy conditions to western Tennessee, western Kentucky, southern Illinois, the Boot Hill, Missouri. But it is going to try to develop more storm activity here. And it does develop this cluster of storms that kind of surges through northern Arkansas, hits Little Rock this afternoon, hits the Mississippi Delta, might hit Memphis, very well could, rides down south the Mississippi River, affects everybody in between. Then it wants to develop these storms back here in Oklahoma. And watch how it kind of develops these storms in southwestern Arkansas. This is like 9 p.m. And there's going to be a lot of heating into here. So if you get hit by a storm here in eastern Oklahoma, northeastern Texas, northern Louisiana, these storms will have an opportunity to be quite intense, guys. They will, just because you have so much man, this is not working with me. There's so much thermodynamic energy with this, a lot of heating. So be aware of these storms. Mary, watch out in northeast Texas. This is like 10 p.m. These storms could mean business by the time they move in. And then they could begin to move almost northeast to southwest because they're riding of the ridge into this area. And I know I'm kind of getting to the south central frame. But, potential wind gusts from this. On this particular run, the H-R model, look how it picks up on these storms this morning and getting into this afternoon. And then it develops that separate area to watch right into here tonight. Kind of first this morning into this afternoon wave right here. This is what develops tonight. And these are some pretty strong winds associated with these lines of storms. 50, 60, 70 mile per hour winds. So we just got to watch to see any kind of changes they make from the Storm Prediction Center. This is typically overdone, especially when there's not a whole lot of wind energy in the atmosphere. But it certainly shows a scenario where we're going to have some storms capable of producing some pretty strong winds up here. So, well, down here. The Northeast today, pretty active day of weather. Quiet this morning, though. But, I mean, by midday, we got thunderstorms developing here in Ohio. A lot of rain. These storms are already making this way into western PA. Storms down here in southern Ohio. Storms, are back here. I mean, there's just a lot of clusters of storms. One down here in Kentucky. This line of storms developing and moving through eastern PA now, starting to move into New Jersey. Looks like a nasty line of storms from Albany down to New York City. Could move in later this afternoon into this evening and eventually make it all the way to Boston in the middle of the night tonight. So this is kind of a one-punch deal. I mean, it moves in and it moves out. But, just a closer look at the heaviest impact area. Here it comes. Here's these storms. And this is the area I want to watch here. Big-time heating will occur in areas, will happen here in areas of like New Jersey, Delaware. But I really want to watch this area right into here because you're certainly going to get a lot of heating. The heat advisories are there. These storms could be quite intense. I mean, already this is, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Watch out if you're in PA. I mean, all the way up to the southern tier of New York. These storms could be intense. And then this continues. And, I mean, you get a pretty, this is believable. Around 9 p.m., 10 p.m., you get a pretty nasty line of storms that tries to work its way into the New York City area, northern New Jersey, all the way into Long Island. The further south you get, probably the less widespread coverage of strong to severe storms there will be. But, I mean, a lot of this energy doesn't get into the I-95 corridor until like later this afternoon, more so this evening. And watch out Boston. I mean, this is like midnight, 1 a.m. Some storms are moving through southern New England. And then all of this energy heads on out. So just be aware of these storms. It looks like it'll, it's one round sweeps in. Some areas, maybe a couple rounds. But projected wind gusts from this, you can see where the main cluster of storms is. 40, 50 mile per hour wind gusts are possible in these clusters of storms that kind of move more so like in this area right into here that I'm circling. Kind of starts out in Ohio and West Virginia, moves through northern VA, Maryland, to Delmarva, most of Pennsylvania, into New York City, and then eventually into southern New England later this evening. So just be aware of these storms. They could pack some damaging winds today for sure. That's why you do have this slight risk. Now, we've already talked about Arkansas. I know, Louisiana and Arkansas are always two weird states where sometimes I cover them in the southern plains, sometimes in the southeast. But anyways, we just got to watch for those clusters of storms we've already talked about. These could be nasty. Some more storms could fire in the panhandle of Texas today, southern Oklahoma. We got to watch these storms in eastern New Mexico, eastern Colorado. These could be strong to severe, large hail, some damaging winds, even a tornado risk is possible. A little impulse of energy coming out of the Rockies. You just got to watch all these storms in southern Oklahoma. This is later this evening. This is around 9 p.m. Central Time. Most of Texas looks dry besides the panhandle, but you just got to watch these storms in northeast Texas as they kind of pivot around that ridge. They are literally doing this. It's pretty wild stuff. Starting here this morning and then going this way. And it's because you got high pressure here and it's riding around this ridge. It's what we call ridge riders. It's always it'll be cool after we get through the next 24 hours and kind of reviewing the radar if these storms really quite literally ride around this ridge of high pressure. But eventually this gets all the way into eastern Texas, into the overnight hours. Could still be ongoing. Models typically have a poor handle on this, but we are going to wake up to some showers across the high plains, central plains as we're waking up tomorrow morning. Just be aware of these storms in eastern Colorado. I know they don't look that worrisome, but they could certainly pack a punch. Large hail, cooler air aloft, the higher in elevation you are. So out here in the north central U.S., finally a quieter day. Now down here in Indiana, Ohio, some showers and storms are possible. I think you got to get more so, especially in Indiana and Illinois, the southern half of each state, for you to have an opportunity. I think the northern half of these states up into the Great Lakes region, the upper Midwest, calmer conditions with a little bit of shower activity this evening in the Great Lakes region being possible. All in all, though, guys, waking up tomorrow morning to some showers in the Dakotas, where we will kind of restart our severe weather threats across the northern tier of the country, getting into tomorrow, into the weekend. But today, enjoy your quieter weather. I know it's been quite active up here. Much quieter of a day for sure. The western U.S., we're going to have some moisture just moving across the Rockies. I do want to mention the moisture here in the Pacific Northwest, some rainy conditions in western Washington and Oregon, some shower, just a very showery day for sure. But you noticed all the rain that was in the Rockies here. We're actually just going to zoom into this, and definitely a lot of moisture popping up. You know, if you're anywhere from Nevada into Utah, look at these storms, pop-up storms going on in Idaho, you know, western Montana. Some storms could hit severe limits in areas of southeastern Wyoming. Look at all this downpour activity in New Mexico. Some storms down deep in areas of Arizona, especially like southeastern Arizona. And just look at all this energy kind of moving over Nevada, Utah especially. A lot of shower and storm activity. You know, I don't think, you know, as far as severe weather, it's anything crazy, but it is certainly worth paying attention to. And, you know, no crazy rainfall amounts based off the blend of all models. But certain areas could get a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of rain. And for certain areas in the panel I'm showing you, that's a lot of rain in a 24-hour period, especially for New Mexico and Arizona. So just be aware of flash flooding and these storms out here today. So temperatures very hot all the way up to New York City. Once you get into the interior Northeast, not as bad, just 70s and 80s. More comfortable day across the Great Lakes region, the Midwest. Getting some relief, a little bit more drier air, 70s and 80s. There's no relief ahead of these storms. It'll be kind of surging, and this energy surging south. Temperatures into the 90s and 100s across the southeast. Same thing across the deep south and then the south central U.S. Now you move out west, you know, just run-of-the-mill kind of heat, nothing too crazy. You'll get pretty hot in Utah up to Idaho, Nevada. And then the eastern plains of Colorado, but nothing you guys can't handle. But it'll be hot, you know, ahead of these storms that will try to form later on this afternoon to this evening. Very, very hot day in Oklahoma and northern Texas also, where excessive heat warnings are in effect. Your heat indices will get well over 110 degrees in these areas, so be aware of that. So let's give you an update on the tropics. So there is an area of interest. In fact, I'll go on and show both. I don't want to leave the other little thing hanging here. There is a tropical wave here, right here in the Eastern Caribbean, starting to move into the Central Caribbean. And this still has a 20% chance to develop into a depression or named storm by the time it gets into the Western Caribbean or the Bay of Campeche. But all in all, chances of this developing is pretty low. Really, this is the one we watch. Tropical wave located where the X is. Once it moves into this area of the Central and Western Atlantic, just east of the Lesser Antilles, which is, you know, right in here. Then like the Windward Islands, then it will have a chance to develop right when it gets into here. 30% chance to develop. Now, I want to let you guys know, I'm making this video as of around 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Another update could end up happening by the time I'm done with this video here in the next 10-15 minutes. But as of right now, this is a 30% chance to develop. So I'll try to go back to this once I'm done with this video and try to give you some updated information, see if they, you know, dropped some new information right at the tail end of this video. But wave is right here, 30% chance to develop into a depression or named storm once it gets into this region. So if we look at the satellite and try to figure out where this wave is, well, it's right here. That is our tropical wave. Right now, you know, you just see these blues, greens, yellows, oranges, reds. That's where you got shower and storm activity right here along this belt of moisture. Okay, there's a lot of dry air on top of the storm, but this tropical wave, you got a couple things working with it. One, it's really embedded in a nice bubble of moisture. Two, the upper wind pattern is pretty favorable right now, and I think it'll remain favorable over the next few days. And then three, you have what we call an MJO convective pulse that's favorable for rising air beginning to move over the Atlantic. Okay, so you got things working with it. Now, one thing that is working against it in the shorter term is that dry air north of the system, but I really think this is kind of cocooned in a bubble of moisture. Okay, now we are watching this too. This is going to continue to move this way, but I don't think this is going to survive or develop. I think it'll just kind of maintain what it is, and it is what it is basically. So just to kind of talk about that dust, right? Here's a look at it. Sun obviously came up on the Eastern Atlantic and then North Africa quite, a few hours ago, right? If you look really closely, I'm going to stop this, right? Let's stop it right here. This is our wave, way down here. I mean, it's pretty far south. If you look really closely, I mean, you got to look close. You got to pull in your bifocals here. If you look kind of where all these, high-level cirrus clouds are, first off, you look right here, you can kind of see that tan color here. That is the dust coming off the Saharan desert here in North Africa. Okay, as it makes its way into the Atlantic, it's moving this way. Okay, there's a lot of dust. If you look right here, there's kind of a muted tan color right here. If you look up here, sort of more so bluish right into here. Right into here, it's more so kind of got tan up under those splotches of white, which are clouds. That is our dust located right into here, which is north of this wave right into here. Okay, but this is for the most part cocooned sort of in a kind of a moist atmosphere, so it's not being affected too much. And one reason is because this thing is so far south. I mean, it's a low rider down here, is what we call it. But talking about some of the latest model guidance, we'll go over the GFS and the European. The GFS, as we're waking up this morning, is full send on this system. I would say the Euro's kind of sniffed it out first. It's kind of backed off a little bit, but now the GFS is like, all right, man, I'm taking the lead. But a lot of times the GFS model-wise takes the lead, and then, it takes you somewhere that, is not correct. Sometimes it can be a terrible model. But GFS will start off Thursday morning, tomorrow morning. It's already saying, hey, this is going to be a 1011 millibar low. As this number drops, for example, we get the Friday morning, 12Z Friday. Look up here for the timestamp, June 28, 12Z Friday, stands for Friday morning. This drops to 1007 millibar low. Take it to Saturday morning. This is 1002 millibar low. The lower that number drops, the stronger the system. All right, we take it into Sunday morning. All right, this is starting to get closer to the Lesser Antilles. This is a sub 1000 millibar low, 994. That would make it a tropical storm. This will likely be barrel. And there is something to watch behind this too, which is trying to gain some traction also. But we're obviously going to focus on this right here for now. Then we get into Monday morning. This drops us to a 985 millibar low. At this point, if the GFS was correct, we'd be dealing with our first hurricane of the season on the first day of July, which is next Monday morning. And this takes this, into the Lesser Antilles, the islands, and then gets it into the Eastern Caribbean. And I mean, eventually, this drops this all the way to a sub 980 millibar low. This is like a category 2 hurricane at this point, just about getting into the Eastern Caribbean. Now, is that going to happen? I'm not sure. And what happens after this? Well, this is 138 hours out, and this is not very far out, guys. I mean, this is under a week out. Okay, and it develops this into like a pretty decent tropical system just in the next few days. But what happens after it gets into the Caribbean? Well, it maintains itself for a while, but by the time you get into like a week from today, this thing weakens pretty quickly. And it looks like it gets affected by probably an unfavorable wind environment, upper wind environment. It probably gets hit by some shear. I've said this many times before, this area of the Caribbean is not kind this time of the year. Sometimes you get what we call a tut that comes down. It's basically just a permanent upper level low that really whiplashes systems in the Caribbean right here. It creates a lot of shear and just an unfavorable wind pattern. So that is something to watch. Brings a lot of dry air because it messes up the circulations of these systems. Therefore, it introduces a lot of dry air in these systems. So a lot of model guidance has a lot of dry air interfering with anything that gets into the Caribbean. But, that's kind of, too far out. We got to see if this system forms first. Now, the European, gets in the Friday, gets in the Saturday. This is still a very weak low, 10, 12 millibar low. Sunday morning, 10, 11 millibar low. We get into Monday morning, it just never really gets this thing going. And, of course, it would get shredded if it's a weaker system in the Eastern Caribbean. It just turns them basically into a big blob of shower and storm activity. So the European says, hey, at least the operational Euro, I'm not going to develop this. And we don't have the 06Z Euro in. But what I will tell you is if we do look at the GFS ensemble, and the European ensemble shows this too, there is a lot of dry air right up here. You see the brown colors. This is dry air, in the low levels of the atmosphere, drier air. Okay, 850 millibars, lower levels in the atmosphere. You notice where this L is, it's kind of shrouded by the green, more moist air. So it's protected really by a moist bubble. It's just, what kind of happens after that? We're not sure. We don't want to get too far ahead. And I think that it's really protected because it has a pretty favorable upper wind pattern, a little bit of an anticyclonic flow, a ULAC, which basically means that you're getting a lot of air pushed out away from this system that's sort of right in here. A lot of air pushed out away, which is allowing for more air to rise and for this to really maintain, at minimum, a pretty strong tropical wave cruising across the Atlantic. So what happens as it moves into this area, it doesn't really show the full picture, but could interfere, get a lot of dry air with it. We just got to watch. Now, if you look at the European ensemble, which you're going to see a lot of this, this is weathernerds.com. It's a great site. This is the European ensemble. Shows 51 members, throws them all on a screen. It doesn't throw all the members on the screen because if it doesn't develop it on one particular run of those 51 runs, then it's not going to obviously put an L on the screen. But this is 51 members put together and all put on your screen here. So out of those 51 members, how many do you see? And this isn't even 1 week out. This is only goes out all the way out to the evening of July 1st. So out of those 51 members, you got, I'm not going to count all these, but this obviously looks like at least over half the members developing something. Some of these are very weak, like down here a 1010 millibar low, and you got one that's very strong, like a 963 millibar low. Obviously, a stronger system's going to try to gain, it's going to try to move a little bit further north. Stronger systems like to move further north. They'll work against that ridge, a little bit better than a weaker storm. They can feel the upper wind pattern a little bit better in a weaker storm. So just because they have higher cloud tops and just it's a higher up storm that ascends higher up in the atmosphere. But that's a pretty strong signal, right? Now you look at the GFS ensemble, all right, and the new one is actually running right now. In fact, we might be able to, let's do this on the fly here. I just want to get you guys some new information. The new run is running right at this moment, probably. Perfect. It goes all the way out to about the same hour. So what's the latest model guidance show? This is the latest 06Z GFS ensemble. Previously, I was showing you the 00Z from overnight. But still, I mean, even just as heavy of a signal. Remember, the GFS ensemble makes up 31 members. Okay, so over half those members, guys. Over half those members showing a system forming. Some of them are decently strong. A lot of them are weak, though. A lot of them are weak. About the strongest one I see on here is a 1,001 millibar low right in here. So, it's not as aggressive with, it's basically what I'm saying is the GFS ensemble is certainly an outlier the GFS operational run is an outlier to its ensemble mean. So it really is just showing that more stronger scenario that isn't shown at all on its ensemble run. So we'll continue to watch this, guys. This is an interesting kind of development. I would say if I had to put my opinion on it, I think this has a chance in the shorter term, but in the longer term, I don't know. I would say that the Eastern Caribbean typically wins out this time of the year, but we'll have to watch this, guys. That's all I got. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you again soon.